So we've got a few subjects we want to cover. And I think the first one we're going to talk about is the mixed team setup. So as we said, we got kind of to COVID, we were all remote, then we played around with a bit of hybrid. What is the right thing to do now, and what are you doing now? If I start with you, Sharna, what's it looking like in Zurich?
Hello? I don't think I'm on. But, so we went through I'm not allowed to say the C word. We all went through the C word, and we did adjust to training and onboarding individuals from home. Was it a success? Sometimes. I think it's varying degrees of success dependent on the experience of the individual. So our apprentices, it wasn't a great experience for them. And why would it be? You know, they were young, they were in their bedrooms learning, and it was difficult. So no, from a Zurich standpoint, we have taken to onboarding and going back into the office for that reason. And you know, Zurich, we've just invested in a new building, so for us it's very much still maintaining the importance of collaboration and relationship building in the office. But you know, I have views Sue on post onboarding, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But
yeah, so and for S&G then, what does that look like now? Just from an onboarding perspective, we'll talk about kind of the other aspects, but from onboarding, what have you learned, S&G?
We found, particularly for engagement, we like to do it face-to-face.
Okay.
So we bring them in. It's a balance because we give them the option of hybrid beyond their initial training period, but practically to get that engagement, to get the familiarity, ease the communication, we like to have them in face-to-face.
Okay. And Rob and Andy, are you singing that same tune or are you doing something different in onboarding?
Just check this is on. Hi everyone. Yeah, so I guess attrition being the key challenge. Actually, what we saw was there are different cohorts that have different attrition rates, and originally through the COVID period, it was more in the new starter contact centre population where we would see a higher percentage of attrition. So that's what led to the focus on that onboarding journey and to ensure that we can connect with those employees. And we're exploring too still the virtual onboarding approach where we can expand the recruitment pool, of course, across the UK and not be then restricted to a local recruitment strategy. But also we're doing a face-to-face onboarding as well, where as I know that we share this across the panel, that connection with the employee and that human element that we believe is absolutely crucial.
Okay. Rob, anything controversial at the end there?
Nothing controversial. From our point of view, we tried everything. Nobody was ready for hybrid, nobody was ready for home working, we didn't have the skill set for it, we didn't have the futuring. Leaders tend to learn from leaders, so we don't really do. Nobody was ready. So we spent 3 years being very curious, trying everything, seeing what works. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so some things will work for some things won't work for others. Getting better at virtual training, that's been a huge one for us. And just trying to settle on, we were a Somerset company that employs Somerset people, we're now a Somerset company that employs people from all over the world. So it's opened doors to having to be right culturally, flexible bank holidays, for example. Bank holidays tend to fall on religion. And so giving people flexibility, just trying everything, opening doors. So 3 years of being very curious and playful.
But as a consistent message, it sounds as if, though, certainly from an onboarding perspective, we've tried the virtual, and at the moment what we're saying is that isn't working. So the face-to-face engagement, Rob?
It works if you do it right.
Okay.
So and everybody needs a level of, if you're going to have hybrid and home working, you have to have virtual. You can't say we have hybrid working, but we're better when we see you, because the very nature of hybrid and home is that we don't see you.
Okay.
So it will work if you do it, but you've got to challenge yourself to do it better. I've seen so many training sessions where someone just sits and talks to you for an hour, and it's just so disengaging. It's not done right. So for me, it works if you do it well.
Okay. Okay. And then in terms of a kind of hybrid working and what's available and on offer, are we supportive of that in terms of a way forward? It kind of, when everyone was home and then people were looking for hybrid, has it changed the culture of the future, do you think, Sharna?
Yeah, I mean, it's made
a logistical nightmare for many, which has just taken some adjustment and tools and techniques to be able to oversee operationally.
Like what? What sort
So
of things?
if you think, who's in what day, when are you all getting together, where are you? Oh, I've got a question, are you online, is your light green, that kind of thing. But that's not insurmountable. My issue is I think there's still an old-fashioned mindset for some that if you're not in the building 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, then you can't possibly be working. You can't possibly be as effective as you are. And we've seen from James's stats earlier and the things that people are expecting, which I totally agree with, flexibility's up there. And if I steal his phrase, wherever you are, James, is how can I be brilliant and be me if I'm so restricted? And from a D&I perspective, you can open doors to individuals that wouldn't have necessarily applied for these roles. If we look at the new generation, there will be individuals who perhaps don't feel they could apply for a role because of the restrictions on the 9 to 5 approach or the lack of flexibility. And looking at sort of recent stats, there's only 12% of vacancies in the UK at the moment that are advertised on a part-time or flexible basis. Wow. So for us, being a huge proportion of UK talent pools and vacancies available, we can make a real difference in our industry. Zurich, we are doing it. 100% of our roles are advertised on that flexible basis, and we are expected to make it work.
Okay.
And that's it. We've seen a 95% increase in female part-time workers off the back of it, and we're really proud of that. So
Absolutely. And then in terms of, so again, the hybrid working, particularly in teams that hadn't done that before, so traditionally everyone was sat in the office, you're 9 till 5. So Andy, from a manager's perspective, they've had to learn really quickly then, and possibly are still learning. How do you manage a hybrid team if you've not done it before? Is it a new skill set or?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's we're having to adapt, and those team leaders are absolutely having to adapt. And I think it was mentioned earlier about what's the communication changes that are required for the team leader by way of frequency. Do they need to speak to the home worker more regularly? Is the method of contact changing? You know, we work from Teams, but we have other technology platforms as well. So I think providing team leaders with the tool set, a new tool set is absolutely crucial, yeah.
And I think it was those basics, wasn't it? Start. So when you've got a mixed team and you've got some people online and some people in the room, how to manage that as an audience, I think has been a challenge. So Rob, from your perspective, back to that kind of engagement thing, so a team where I've got some online and I've got some in the room, what's the best way to manage that?
The short answer is there's no right or wrong. There's no set way. Every conversation will be different depending on variables such as length of time, location, topic, the people in the room. So if you want to have a deep, meaningful conversation, don't phone somebody up, maybe get them in the office.
Okay.
Maybe go to Costa, other coffee shops are available. Just have a sit-down, face-to-face conversation with them there if that works. But there's no right or wrong, there's not a one-size-fits-all. So for me, curious and playful is the best way to be, to actually say what will work for you, because what will work for you wouldn't work for Andy, wouldn't work for Sharna. So it will need to be different for every person. And when we took up, my background was the world of sport. And in the world of sport, you have people whose job it is, engagement at work and form and sport are exactly the same science. It's how you feel about yourself, the best possible version. Sport, you have people who are just there to look after the individuals. Pep Guardiola from Man City just makes sure that the players are in the best possible space. Work, we don't do that. We have leaders who have stuff to do, and when you're not doing your stuff, you lead these people over here. But it's not, it doesn't tend to be the priority, and it needs to flip to understand if I've got a team of 10 people, all 10 are going to need something different, why I need 10 different skill sets. So my leadership doesn't become the thing I do when I'm not doing my day job, it is my day job.
It's back to what James said, that individualising piece becomes almost more prolific, doesn't it? And in terms of, I think there was such an outpouring of people that loved working from home. They'd never had the opportunity to before, got the washing out or whatever it was that made their life better in terms of that environment to work from home. And it's not, I don't think, for anyone to question what makes that a success for them. But have you seen people change where at the first it seemed great and they've perhaps started to walk back in, or what's your view?
Yeah, we started off with quite a lot more wanting remote. Then we had quite a few thinking, oh, maybe I'd like to come in, maybe hybrid's better. Certainly over the winter, we saw quite a few more wanting to come back in, whether that was connected to increased energy costs.
Probably.
Can't say, but our percentages between purely remote, office-based and hybrid have changed.
Yeah.
So we're now much more on a hybrid basis.
And do you think that will continue that? Or have we plateaued so people think they know what they like, or don't
Who
know?
knows? I think it is about the balance and the individualisation. What works for some doesn't work for others. We have some that will really only want to work remotely, but they're extremely productive.
Out of interest, just going around the panel, what's your working pattern, Rob, in terms of, are you hybrid, are you in, are you out? What does it look like?
It changes. It's nicer weather. I like to play a bit of golf, so hybrid hybrid flexibility works for me when the weather's nicer. When it's a bit darker and colder, I tend to go in the office a bit more.
Okay.
Because I haven't got to put my own heating on. You know, it comes to the point where there's not every month or every week will be different. So having flexibility for me is about opening the door and letting people walk through whichever one suits them at the time.
Okay.
So yeah, mine changes.
Anne?
Predominantly in the office, but I do occasionally, when I've really got something to focus on, we'll work from home.
And how did you find it then when there was a force to work from home?
I found it quite lonely.
Yeah.
Because I very much thrive off the individual interactions.
Yeah.
But Teams and all the other sources, we were constantly on the phone, constantly on calls, sort of talking about how we were going to manage this, how we were going to manage that. So
I wonder if that
screen time.
And I wonder if that winter thing, you just mentioned it, Rob, when it's dark and miserable and you're at home, yes, there's the fact someone else's heating is on, which helps, but I think perhaps on those months we might see, and it might be a seasonality thing that we start to see where there's more people in the winter because of those external factors of feeling a bit miserable with 10 days of rain.
People struggled with their mental health.
Yeah.
Found it extremely lonely and lost that family feel in the interaction that was what kept a lot of people with S&G.
Okay. So in terms of the opportunities then, the equality of opportunities, one thing to want to talk about with all these mixed teams, how do we make sure it isn't the voice that's the loudest, the person that's sat in the office the latest, which I think historically were reasons for promotion or kind of to be noticed. Thankfully, I think that has changed, and I think we're looking at other ways, but how do we make sure there's an equality, Andy, to make sure that within that team, it's not the loudest voice or the person who's present?
Yeah, I think that again goes back to the skills of the team leader and the regular performance development conversations, the personal development conversations that are being had, and the frameworks that we talked about that support those development conversations. If you've got consistency around those frameworks, then you have a governance structure that I think will equal fair opportunities.
Yeah.
I think that's key.
Wonderful. Okay, let's move on then from hybrid. It sounds as if it's here to stay, which is good. Flex, getting more, and to your point, brings more talent out that perhaps wouldn't have been considering it before, which is what we're here to do today. This is a really long kind of question. When we debated this as a panel on our call the other day, I got the shortest answer ever. So we were talking about, yes, we brought in a bit of consumer duty, the customer needs, and of course how their communication needs sometimes changes. You know, historically, if you had a claim, you would phone a call centre and you would speak to someone. That's changed dramatically through tech enhancements and through what customers want and need. And then overlaying that, we've got the consumer duty. So we had a great debate the other day on this. And the strapline that came out was, what do we actually need to do with consumer duty in terms of customers?
Well, Rob's was the best answer.
When were we never looking after consumers?
Exactly.
When did that change?
So it's a case, I think, of just kind of looking after what we've got and just doing the same as we've done for now. But in terms of what we're seeing with customers and how that's changing as skill sets to upskill our employees with, so historically I might have just had to use spoken word. I'm now using written word and different things. How do we support that in industry?
So there's a couple of things in my head when we think of this topic. So I guess as we progress with digital and automation tools for the more straightforward claims and the ones that the customer just wants their money for their TV or whatever it might be, you're left then with a pool of claims that aren't suitable for digital and automation, and they're the more emotive claims. They're the ones that need that care and attention and that skill set from an individual who can show empathy naturally, who can deal with that claim with the customer genuinely at the heart of what they do. So I think for me there's a shift change in how we recruit from traditional insurance tech, I call techies, the great minds that have dealt with claims for years, and we would always look for that technical skill set. For us now, it's a move to, you don't need an insurance background to do the deal in claims. You actually need, you can look at hairdressers or anybody that has got that skill set of retail type approach to consumers, and they can learn the technical side of handling a claim. But for me, that is change. That is a change, and it's something we need to follow through with.
And something interesting we'll talk with Crescent is in the talent talk is how things are changing, aren't they, between kind of that technical bit. So we'll hopefully get a bit more flavour on that kind of as we go forward. And I think if we're saying there's a move toward the soft skills versus the technical knowledge, which kind of segues beautifully, thank you, Sharna, into our last question, talking about technology. Enhancing the development and retention of claims talent in our industry. So what have we brought in recently that's not, as I say, something that's new perhaps in terms of claims process, but is helping our employees feel better within their roles to be retained and to... James Lambert, what are we saying? We're not on the roller coaster. What are we doing? Flying high.
Flying high, yeah.
Flying high. So how do we make sure we're engaging to get them flying high? What are we implementing at the moment?
We've introduced a new phone system which enables customers to give instant feedback, which can then be given to the individual. So whether that's helping them to feel good, yeah, I know I've done the right thing, whether it's identifying possible training needs, but it's keeping the customer happy because they're getting the chance to feedback instantly, but it's also helping the individuals.
And was that as a result of a pre-planned kind of decision, this is what you're going to do, or was it from the result of home working? What was the kind of inspiration for that, Anne?
It was something we were looking at anyway to give us more or better MI.
Okay.
But it also came out of feedback we got from individuals.
Okay. From the employees themselves.
Yeah. But we also asked the customer what they want, how they want to be communicated with. So back to James's individualisation, the humanisation, so that if an individual wants a very quick process and wants to deal with it all via tech, they can do.
Yeah.
But, you know, some people want that human touch, want to be able to talk to people, want to be able to ask questions and discuss. So we give the customer that option at the outset.
Okay.
And continue to ask them.
Good. We've mentioned, I can't remember the name, what's this Facebook for Workplace that someone's mentioned before? Who's got that?
Yeah, Facebook for Work. So I guess a technology platform that enables colleagues to share content, celebrate success, and I guess in a way it's less corporate and more individualising. I think that's the great thing about it. But yes, there are many different platforms out there. Workplace is one that's owned by Facebook, and we found following implementation post-COVID, it was a huge tool in the communication strategy armour.
How do you manage the corporate side of a Facebooking workplace? Because I'd always be kind of wondering how, turn off the comments or whatever.
Yeah.
But how does it work to make sure that it's got that community feel, if you like, so the water cooler moment type stuff, happy birthday to Nick or wherever, but is still maintaining what's needed for a corporate side? Yeah,
well, you can create groups. So claims may have a group within an insurance business. Sales and service may have their own group, and then you can create team leader groups within that as well. And there are various rules and governance that you can have around those groups. So you can control content. Yeah.
And do you have someone within your organisation that polices it and reads it all day?
Yeah, what a job. Yeah. I quite like that job myself. Yeah, just to see some of the comments coming through. But yes, there's a comms team that supports.
Okay. And Rob, that kind of thing, what do you do in Claims Consortium to water cool moment?
Well, more of my job is finding apps and tech that can help people be better versions of themselves. So more mindfulness. I love in James's presentation, everything in life does this. Mental health, physical health, financial health, how you feel about your partner, your family, your friends. Trying to stop people making decisions at the low bit is kind of quite key to understand how I can be more mindful, how I can be more optimistic. Like Sharna said, insurance is a very compliant, process-driven industry with a ton of emotion. And the national curriculum was written, 60 years ago? So if you're expecting people to come out of education with a high level of emotional intelligence, we're not going to have that. We need to train it and teach it. So teaching the process and the compliance is really simple. Having somebody's emotional intelligence level increasing is a harder sell, but we need to do it. Because otherwise it's pot luck as to whether you recruit somebody who's got a high level of emotional intelligence already. That's down to their upbringing, their parentage, their belief systems, and you're literally gambling, or you grow it yourself.
Okay.
So mine is more around apps and tech that can help people handle the world around them emotionally.
Okay. And any tech or apps you could share with the group today?
I'm making one to watch our space.
Oh. Lovely segue, Rob. Any that you're not making yourself?
There's tons of even the calm ones, like the mindfulness apps that can just help people sleep better, help people in emotions of high stress to destabilize. I've done some work with the Avonmouth emergency response call centres because of obviously their level of emotional patterns. But there's a lot of apps they use. So there's probably 10 or 12. I've got one written down, but things like the mindfulness calm ones just to help people be better versions.
Okay. So were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add, so, because I love the work that Rob had referenced with the emergency services, because that is a huge wellbeing oversight piece we need for our employees, because they do have individuals in such circumstances where we do have individuals threatening to take their lives, etc. But one of the things, pieces of kit that we're looking at the moment, and some may have it, and I'd love a chat if you do, speech analytics. So every single call, we all know you will audit them. You'll have some form of audit over them. Using speech analytics now, that is an automated process on each and every call as opposed to just a sample. So we can, the tool will be able to identify areas of stress. We'll be able to use it as a coaching tool to say, did you respond to the customer's stress in the right way? And equally, how do we then pick up on individuals that have had that interaction that could have been quite stressful for them? So that's in pilot at the moment. I'm really looking forward to seeing what that does.
Can we train on that?
Yeah, so we have some behavioural psychologists, if you like, coming in to talk through and observe our telephone interaction. So coming back to consumer duty and the need to ensure that our communications, whether written or verbal, are really clear and appropriate for the retail consumer. We're using their advice to say, what should we be looking for in these calls? And then you can then train off, here's a perfect call, here are the great things that we want to see, or one-to-one coaching on, that could have gone better, and how would you do it better?
Okay, and I guess some of it will be experience in dealing with those different types of things as well.
Yeah.
And just on training, I know we've spoken about the elephant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other products available in the market. But I think it's a really cool concept around, if you haven't got that face-to-face learning, and, we know that without the face-to-face, we have to invest more support in colleagues because the social learning element is in the market that can pinpoint capability gaps within your teams. You'll load on your training content onto this app. It will regularly question the individuals within your teams, and it will identify those capability gaps and attempt to repair those gaps through asking questions from your training material. Each individual gets their own dashboard to see where their top 5 capability gaps are. That's all reportable, and yeah, you can identify or know your problems. So yeah.
And other products available.
As
with all that we've talked about today, there are other products available.
Rob, are you making that one, or?
Yeah, Rob's making a note to build again. Lots of interesting subjects. Thank you very much for sharing individually what you're doing as organisations. It's great to share so we can try and be better tomorrow. Again, everyone's around today, aren't you, for the rest of today. But for now, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our amazing 4 panellists. Thank you very much.